I was dead for 45 minutes. And in that place, I didn't see heaven. I didn't see hell. I only saw every person I had ever hurt, staring at me without saying a single word. If you've ever believed that police officers don't feel fear, don't break, don't bleed, you've never looked into the eyes of someone who's been betrayed by the very thing they built their life on. My name is Thomas Granger. 28 years in the force. I've seen it all. People who lie better than they breathe, good men dragged through the mud, cases where truth never got its day in court. I used to believe the world ran on rules, logic, and consequences. But all of that shattered. Not at a crime scene, but in the kitchen of the home I built with sweat and illusions. The day I discovered that my wife of over 20 years was having an affair with the man I once called my best friend, I didn't scream. I didn't explode. I just stood there. In those few seconds, every rule, every value, every belief I had clung to felt like it was being eaten away by acid. Nothing remained untouched. From that day forward, I lived like a machine. I signed the divorce papers without a single accusation. I moved to a quiet neighborhood in the suburbs where nobody knew my name. I stopped talking to people, including my son. The boy who once clung to my hand during baseball practice now saw me as a shadow. I knew it, but I didn't stop, because I was afraid. Afraid that if I opened my mouth, I'd have to admit I had failed. Not in my job, but in life. I adopted a dog named Max, just an ordinary mutt someone had abandoned near the guard post. I didn't take him in out of kindness. I just didn't want people to see how alone I was. But Max became the only one who greeted me each morning. He never asked questions, never betrayed me. He was simply there, loyal in a way humans seem to have forgotten. I didn't go to church. I didn't believe in the afterlife. I didn't pray. To me, life was life, and when it ended, that was it. Until one day, my heart, the only part of me that still had rhythm after all those numb years, finally gave out. The pain struck without warning, like a sucker punch. I was pouring myself a cup of coffee when the world suddenly tilted. My vision blurred, my hands began to shake. I reached for the emergency number, but my fingers wouldn't respond in time. I collapsed onto the kitchen floor, watching Max barking frantically beside me. Then everything went black.
They said I was clinically dead for 45 minutes. No heartbeat, no breathing, no response. But it was in those 45 minutes that I saw something no amount of training in my 28 years as a police officer could have ever prepared me for. Death and truth. Not the kind of truth you find in a courtroom. The truth of the soul. The kind that can't be denied, excused, or escaped. I had died, but death itself wasn't the most terrifying part. What shook me to my core was being shown everything I had lived, but never truly understood. And now, I want to tell you what happened when my soul left my body, and why death, for me, became the beginning of a completely new life. I always thought death would come like a loud explosion, a dark plunge, a wailing sound pulling you into the void. But it didn't. For me, death began with silence, a silence so complete I could hear the sound of myself disappearing. I left my body, not like in the movies. There were no swirling lights, no ringing bells, just a sudden lightness, like someone had finally unstrapped the armor I'd worn my entire life. I looked down and saw myself lying there on the kitchen floor, still, pale, unmoving. The coffee cup had spilled, its dark liquid spreading across the tiles like congealed blood. Max was still there. He let out sharp, panicked cries, nudging my shoulder with his nose, pawing at my chest, as if trying to wake something that had already gone quiet. I saw the ambulance arrive. The EMTs rushed in, performing all the moves I'd seen countless times on crime scenes, compressions, defibrillator shocks, counting every second. But I felt nothing. I simply stood there, watching them try to revive a shell I had locked my soul inside for far too long. And I didn't feel regret. At that moment, I didn't want to come back. I felt light. So light that every weight, anger, loneliness, and pride melted off me like mist in the morning sun. Then the space around me changed. It was no longer my house. I entered a field of soft light, not blinding, not brilliant, just gentle, like an embrace I'd forgotten from childhood. No one called my name, but I knew I was being led. There was no form, no voice, just a presence. It felt like coming home after being lost for a very long time. That's when I began to see images flash before me. But strangely, they weren't the highlights of my career, the medals, the cases I had solved. No, what I saw were the small things, the ones I had written off as unimportant.
My son's eyes when I brushed off his invitation to his graduation. The tears in my ex-wife's face when I refused to hear her out. The look of crushed hope on a young offender's face when I handed down judgment without even asking his story. I wasn't just shown these moments like a slideshow. I felt them. I felt the emotions others had experienced because of me. Their joy, their hurt, their fear. The things I once dismissed as no big deal now returned like invisible blades, silent, but leaving scars. I thought I was strong, but standing in front of that unfiltered truth, I felt more exposed than I ever had. No badge, no title, just me, a soul that had lived without ever truly being present. I wanted to look away, to erase those memories, pretend they never happened, but I couldn't, because they were what I needed to see. I wasn't being punished, I was being shown. And in that showing, in that gentle revelation, lay the most profound form of judgment, not by force, but by clarity. I began to cry, not out of pain, but because I finally saw the truth I had been running from my entire life. I had let the coldness of the world freeze my heart. In trying to protect myself from pain, I had blocked out joy, connection, love, every human warmth that had ever tried to reach me. At that moment, I truly believed I'd be stuck in this space forever, surrounded by everything I had done wrong. But then something happened. A gentle presence approached, and for the first time in years, I heard my name, not spoken out loud, but carried on a current of love. A voice I hadn't heard in so long, and yet instantly recognized, not with my ears, but with my soul. I turned around, and the person I saw was my mother. But as she looked in her final years, there was no gray hair, no weary eyes hardened by survival and illness. She stood there, as if time had never touched her. The light around her wasn't blinding. It was warm, gentle, like a small flame on a cold night, just enough to let me see clearly, just enough for me to remember that I had never stopped being her child in her arms. She didn't blame me for the years I left her alone. She didn't ask why I stopped calling, why on the day she died, I stood silently at the funeral and then walked away. She didn't say a word, just a look, a hug, and I collapsed. I cried like I had never cried before, not as a grown man, but as someone utterly broken, not by death, but by unconditional love. In a lifetime shaped by judgment, the presence of forgiveness shattered me.
I asked her, "How can you still smile at me after all the wrong I've done?" And there was no verbal answer. but I felt it, soaking into every corner of my soul. Because a mother never stops loving her child, even when that child has stopped loving himself. As I was dissolving in that light, another familiar shape appeared, smaller, 4 legs. Those eyes, I knew them. Max. But not the Max I left behind. This was Max as a puppy, bouncing with joy every time I came home. The same dog I once called just a stray was the only living creature who clawed at my chest, trying to bring me back when I collapsed. He ran around me now as if nothing had changed. He remembered me. He celebrated me. And he didn't need a reason. I knelt, wrapped my arms around him, and for the first time, I understood something I had always dismissed. Love doesn't need to be earned. It doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be allowed to exist. Then another voice came, deeper this time, steadier. It was Jim, my closest partner, who died during a raid 10 years ago. I never attended his funeral. I couldn't, because that death was on me. I gave the order too soon. Jim took the bullet. I never forgave myself. Jim looked at me, no anger in his eyes. Just this. You know, Tom, dying wasn't as bad as I thought. But the worst part? Watching the living lock themselves in a prison called "What If?" I lowered my head. I was wrong. Jim smiled. Who isn't? The question is, did you learn anything from it? And then it began. Not like a highlight reel, not a fast-paced montage. It was slow, frame by frame. Every dismissive glance, every cold reply, every time I shut the door in my son's face because I was afraid of feeling too much. I wasn't watching with my own eyes. I saw through theirs. I felt what they felt. I heard my son crying in his room, whispering, "Why doesn't Dad want me anymore?" I heard my wife sobbing in the kitchen saying, "I don't need anything. I just want him to look at me like he used to." No one yelled at me. No one condemned me. But I, the man who had built a career on logic and justice, stood there without a single excuse left to give. I fell to my knees and cried out, "I didn't know. I didn't mean to. I thought I was doing the right thing." And the light responded, not with thunder, but with something quieter, something that broke deeper. That's the problem, Tom. You lived to be right. But being right was never enough. This world doesn't need you to be right. It needs you to be real. I asked her, "How can you still smile at me after all the wrong I've done?" And there was no verbal answer, but I felt it, soaking into every corner of my soul. Because a mother never stops loving her child, even when that child has stopped loving himself. As I was dissolving in that light, another familiar shape appeared, smaller, 4 legs. Those eyes, I knew them. Max. But not the Max I left behind. This was Max as a puppy, bouncing with joy every time I came home. The same dog I once called just a stray was the only living creature who clawed at my chest, trying to bring me back when I collapsed. He ran around me now as if nothing had changed. He remembered me. He celebrated me. And he didn't need a reason. I knelt, wrapped my arms around him, and for the first time, I understood something I had always dismissed. Love doesn't need to be earned. It doesn't need to be explained. It just needs to be allowed to exist. Then another voice came, deeper this time, steadier. It was Jim,
my closest partner, who died during a raid 10 years ago. I never attended his funeral. I couldn't, because that death was on me. I gave the order too soon. Jim took the bullet. I never forgave myself. Jim looked at me. No anger in his eyes. Just this. You know, Tom, dying wasn't as bad as I thought. But the worst part? Watching the living lock themselves in a prison called What If. I lowered my head. I was wrong. Jim smiled. Who isn't? The question is, did you learn anything from it? And then it began. Not like a highlight reel, not a fast-paced montage. It was slow, frame by frame. Every dismissive glance, every cold reply. Every time I shut the door in my son's face because I was afraid of feeling too much. I wasn't watching with my own eyes. I saw through theirs. I felt what they felt. I heard my son prying in his room, whispering, "Why doesn't Dad want me anymore?" I heard my wife sobbing in the kitchen saying, "I don't need anything. I just want him to look at me like he used to." No one yelled at me. No one condemned me. But I, the man who had built a career on logic and justice, stood there without a single excuse left to give. I fell to my knees and cried out, "I didn't know. I didn't mean to. I thought I was doing the right thing." And the light responded, not with thunder, but with something quieter, something that broke deeper. That's the problem, Tom. You lived to be right. But being right was never enough. This world doesn't need you to be right. It needs you to be real.
The truth didn't kill me, but it burned me from the inside out. There was nothing left to cling to. No armor, no title, no badge. Only a naked soul buckling under the weight of itself. I thought that was rock bottom, but it wasn't, because there was still one person I hadn't dared to face. I stood in the middle of that soft light, shaking like a child with nowhere left to hide. Life kept playing before me, no pause, no rewind. I thought the worst pain was seeing how I'd hurt others, but I was wrong. The worst pain came when I saw someone familiar begin to emerge. Not from the outside, from within. I saw myself, not the man I'd pretended to be, but the shadow version I had buried for years was to appear strong. It was Thomas who sat awake at 2 a.m., alone, with a bottle and a faded family photo. The Thomas who cursed at his reflection after shoving his son away. The Thomas who stood over his mother's grave and refused to cry because, somewhere along the line, he believed tears meant weakness. He looked at me, deep, hollow eyes, worn down, angry. "You want me to disappear, don't you?" he said, his voice hoarse. "Because I embarrass you? Because I'm the weak part, the screaming part, the part of you that needs love and you've always denied?" I couldn't speak. I couldn't deny it. "You don't need my forgiveness," he went on. "I just need you to admit I exist. I need you to stop running from me. Because when you rejected me, you rejected your soul." I collapsed. I had never realized that the thing causing me the deepest pain wasn't anyone else. It was the part of me I'd never had the courage to face. I opened my arms. I embraced him, the messy, broken, wounded version of myself. And in that moment, I felt myself begin to dissolve and be reborn. Because only when I dared to love the most shattered parts of myself did I begin to understand what it truly means to love another. I always thought that once I faced myself, I'd be set free. But the light didn't pull away. The space before me widened like a half-open gate. I heard whispers, not in words, but in warmth, like the lullaby of the universe. It was a feeling of absolute safety, no fear, no expectations, no need to prove anything. A part of me wanted to stay there forever. But then an image appeared, not something projected, not a memory on replay. It rose from inside me. My son, Noah, is sitting on the front steps of our house, his head in his hands. His phone lay beside him, the doctor's voice still echoing. We did everything we could.
Noah didn't cry. He just stared ahead, as if the world had collapsed, and that 17-year-old boy no longer had anyone to call Dad. I stepped back. That peace turned into a deep ache, because for the first time, I saw myself being loved in a way I never understood a child's love for the father he was still waiting for. Then a voice came, this time clear from within the light. "Thomas, you may stay. But if you go, there will be words left unsaid, wounds left unhealed. The choice is yours." I stood still. Half of me wanted to melt into that light, erase all regret, find eternal peace. But the other half, the part that had just learned how to love, couldn't walk away like that. I asked, if I go back, will I have the chance to make things right? The light didn't respond with words. Instead, it took me somewhere else. I was shown the future, one where I didn't return. Noah grew up, but there was always sadness in his eyes. He never spoke of his father. He no longer believed in love. No one spoke my name with warmth. My family line closed, my memory sealed beneath a cold stone. I wasn't just dead. I was erased. I turned away. My heart began to beat for the first time since I had left my body. Not fast, not loud, but real. And I said, I choose to return, not to make things right, but to love. For the first time in my life, I chose love over running. The moment I made my choice, the light drew back. I wasn't pushed. I fell, but it didn't hurt. It felt like slipping through warm water. And then I felt the weight, a heaviness so crushing I couldn't breathe. A hand pressed against my chest. Someone shouted, "We've got a pulse! He's back!" I coughed. I gasped. I opened my eyes. The hospital ceiling came into focus, and in that instant, I knew I had been born again. Not in body, in soul. Noah sat at the foot of the bed, staring at me in disbelief. I couldn't speak. I just reached out my hand. And for the first time in years, two hands, one clenched tight in defense, the other long withdrawn from pain, reached for each other, and we both cried. What happened next, I'll share with you soon. How I shed the iron shell of a wounded man to become a father, a son, and for the first time, a whole human being. And why this story isn't just mine, it's ours.
Because when I opened my eyes that day, I knew the world wouldn't be different. The hospital walls were still pale and cold. Time still moved forward. The people I'd hurt still bore their scars. But I was no longer the same. In that other place, I had been shown the truth. But truth means nothing if you don't live by it. And I realized the hardest part wasn't dying. It was waking up with a heart wide open. No armor, no pride, no escape. The doctors called it a miracle. 45 minutes with no heartbeat, no medical explanation. But I knew this wasn't a miracle meant to keep me alive. It was a second chance to finally begin living. In the days that followed, I didn't pretend to be strong. I was fragile. I was afraid. But I was honest. With the doctors, with the nurses, with myself. I shared my story even when no one asked, because I understood keeping that truth hidden would be denying the very gift I had been given all over again. When Noah came, I didn't say, "I love you." The words weren't ready to leave my lips.
But I asked him something I'd never asked in my entire life. "Are you okay?" He looked at me, eyes hesitant like a lost child who's just found someone to lead them home. He nodded, then sat next to me. We didn't say anything after that, but something between us began to heal in the silence. I asked the hospital for a piece of paper. I wrote my first letter to my ex-wife. Not to blame, not even to apologize with regret, just to say, "I'm sorry I didn't truly listen. And if you can forgive me, please do. If not, I still thank you for having been there." I sent the letter without expecting a reply, because forgiveness doesn't demand a response. Forgiveness is something you give to free yourself first. After I was discharged, I returned to the old house, the one I once used as a fortress to shut out the world. I stood in the living room and looked at the wall clock, which had stopped ticking the moment I collapsed. I took it down, hung up a new one, and whispered, "Now we begin again." I used to live like a soldier, a cop, a man who believed his worth was measured by strength, reason, and being right. But when I came back after 45 minutes of clinical death, I didn't want to be right anymore. I just wanted to be real. I started living again, but not as before. Every morning I placed my hand on my chest, not to check for life, but to remind myself that I'd been given a second chance that not everyone gets. Noah moved in with me for a few weeks. At first, he'd kept his distance awkwardly, unsure. I didn't blame him. How could a son easily embrace a father who had vanished even while present? But slowly, in the quiet spaces between us, something began to grow. We started having dinner together, fixing up the old car in the garage, sitting on the porch, watching the sunset, without needing to say a word. One evening, I looked at Noah, smiled, and said, "You know, son, I never learned how to be a father. I only ever learned how to be a soldier. I'm sorry." He didn't answer right away. He just gently patted my shoulder and said, "That's okay. I never learned how to forgive, but I'm learning." I didn't share my story in front of the cameras. I didn't go on TV. I didn't do it for fame. I shared it with the people who needed to hear it. The elderly man sitting alone in a nursing home. The father on the verge of divorce, wondering if he should still believe. The ones who have been betrayed, who have shut down their hearts, who have lived like nothing was worth loving anymore. I told it in a rough, slow, honest voice. No drama, no preaching. I just said, "I used to believe the world needed me to be strong, but what the world needed was someone willing to cry." I spoke of my mother, of Max, of Jim. It feels like being seen from the other side, not judged, but given a second chance. Many people asked me, "Are you sure it was real? Maybe it was just a hallucination." And I smiled. If a hallucination could teach me how to love again, how to believe again, how to truly live, then I'll choose that hallucination, because the so-called truth I lived in before never made me feel alive. 1 year after coming back, I received an envelope from her, the woman I once called my wife. Inside, there weren't many words, just one line. "Thank you for saying sorry. Even if it was late, I forgave you long ago." I didn't cry. I simply placed that letter next to an old photo where we were once a family. And for the first time, that frame didn't feel heavy in my hands anymore. I know not everyone gets the chance to come back, but everyone can begin again, right from where they stand, as the person they are now. I began to write, not to publish, but to remember. Each word became a mile marker on the road back to my own heart. I wrote down the things no one ever taught me when I was younger. That men are allowed to be vulnerable. That strength doesn't mean not hurting, it means having the courage to face the pain. That forgiveness isn't a noble gesture, it's medicine for the wounds inside us. And that love, even when it comes late, can still rescue a soul frozen for far too long. I came to realize something strange after coming back from death. The world didn't change, but the way I saw it never returned to how it was. I started noticing the small things I used to overlook. An old man is slowly helping his wife cross the street. A little child is clinging to a wet cat in the rain. A cashier smiles at every customer despite standing on her feet all day. These were things I once rushed past without a second glance. Now each one stops me in my tracks. Because now I know those quiet, ordinary moments are the fingerprints of love, alive and moving quietly through the world. One time, walking with Noah, I saw an older man sitting by the lake, his eyes full of sadness. I didn't ask much. I just sat beside him. Eventually, he began to speak. About the wife he just lost. About the words he never got to say. About the ache of being left behind. I didn't offer advice. I just said, I was left behind once too. But it was only after being left behind that I learned how to come home. He turned to me, eyes wet with tears he didn't bother to hide. Are you a pastor or something? I shook my head. No. Just someone who died once and had to learn how to live all over again. When we live from the heart, we don't need a title to be heard. We only need to be sincere. And sometimes that's all it takes to reach a soul desperate for light. One day, Noah asked me, "Dad, are you afraid of dying?" I looked him in the eye and answered slowly, "No, I'm only afraid of dying without ever having truly lived." He didn't say a word. He just reached for my hand. Not like a child needing protection, but like a companion, a witness to the journey of my soul coming back to life. I don't tell this story so you'll admire me. I tell it because I believe, somewhere out there, someone might be living like a shadow, carrying wounds from betrayal, regret, or resentment. And maybe, just maybe, you're wondering to yourself, is it too late to begin again? I am the answer. I'm the one who died for 45 minutes, the one who kept his heart frozen for years, the one who believed no one was worth trusting, worth loving, or worth forgiving. If I can come back from the darkest place and learn how to love again, then so can you. And sometimes, all it takes is one honest sentence, one hug, one brave moment to say, I don't want to live like this anymore. I want to share something with you, something meant for you, right here, right now. The reason I'm telling this story and why I believe you are the next chapter. I didn't tell my story because it's extraordinary. I told you because it's real. A journey from the darkest night back into the light. And I believe, somewhere inside you, there's a story that deserves to be told too. Maybe you've never been clinically dead. Maybe you've never crossed between two worlds. But you've lost. You're hurt. You've been silent when your soul was screaming. You've loved without being loved back. You've forgiven, or maybe you're still trying to find the courage to. And if you're still watching, I believe your soul is speaking too. So I invite you to share your story in the comments. Maybe it's a memory, a wound, a moment you survived, something you've never told a soul. Don't think it's too small, because sometimes a simple story can save a heart that's quietly breaking. We don't need to be someone great to bring light. We just need to be real. I will read. I will listen.
And maybe, just maybe, someone far away will see themselves in your words and begin to heal. Leave your story. Let it live, because you deserve to be heard.